Um, Congratulations, if you're at the point where I'm at, you have successfully installed Exchange. I powered on, or I went and looked at my Exchange console this morning, and the installation was successful. I didn't get any errors on install, which sometimes you can. I'm running an older version of Exchange. I'm not running SP1 or any of the cumulative updates that have come out with it yet, so I'm not sure if that may be the reason that I've run into errors in the past. But anyway, in this case, the installation was good, and we're ready to go. What it asks you on the prompt that says, successful install, it asks you to reboot your machine for configurations to take place. What I did though is I actually shut my machine off, and I already did this. My machine's running again, but what I forgot to mention in the last video was that before you actually start running your Exchange box, you're going to want to allocate it some more resources than what are given to it by default from ESXi. The case being, once you install Exchange, that particular machine will become a resource hog. It'll slow down your entire network if you don't allocate resources appropriately. So what I did was, you right click on that VM while it's turned off and go to Edit Settings, and right here you can see all your hardware settings. Here's your network adapter, so you can see we're in VMnet2. This is basically the LAN or which virtual switch we're connected to. So you can configure that from here. If you remember our diagram, we have two subnets, the 10.29 and the 10.28, and we have a virtual switch in each one. We call it VMnet2 or VMnet1. They're LANs, I guess you could say. And this is where you configure which LAN you're connected to, just in case I didn't go over that yet. But anyway, to allocate more CPU and memory, here are the options you'd use. So what I did was, I gave it another processor core to work with. I only have one physical socket for this computer, so I didn't change that. So I gave it one more processor core to work with, and I gave it 7 gigs of RAM instead of 4. You want at least 6 gigs of RAM for a Exchange server, I believe. I decided to use 7 because I wanted to. I'm running off of an ESXi host with 16 gigs of RAM total and one quad-core processor, I believe. You can check that by going to you can check the specs of your host, ESXi host, by going to okay. Oh, I see. Anyway, you can check the specs of your ESXi host by selecting it from your library and going to Configuration, like I did, and going to processors or memory. So as you can see, I'm running one Intel Xeon processor, running at about 2.7 gigahertz with one. So I have one physical socket, and it's a quad core. However, it's running 8 logical processors, so I'm not sure what that means. Anyway, same for RAM. You can check that. For storage, this is something I didn't go over. Even if you're running it from an ESXi or any virtualized environment, even if you have enough processor power and enough RAM technically to run your machines, and you're still running into performance issues like lag, things like that, it may be because you're running all your machines off of one hard drive. So for my machine, I actually have two half terabyte hard drives in there. Even though one hard drive would be enough for all the machines I'm running, technically it would be enough storage. The fact that you're running everything off of one hard drive means it's going to be you can't read and write data for all your machines at the same time that efficiently. So what I did was I added a second hard drive into my machine, and you can see that ESXi, it logically separates its storage units into what are called data stores, data store 1 and data store 2. In my case, each data store represents just one physical hard disk. However, in most professional cases, one data store will represent one RAID 5 configuration of hard drives. So that would be a minimum of 3 hard drive disks. Just FYI. In my case, they just represent one hard drive each. And if you right-click and go to Browse Data Store, you can see that I have roughly half my virtual machines on one and the other half on the other. So this is the way you want to do it, so you know, hard drive speed won't be an issue for you when you're actually running your VMs. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and console into our ESXi host about now. I'm going to pause the video for 1 second. Okay, we're back, and it looks as though everything's working well. This is my Exchange box, and as you can see, I'm not getting much lag. Yeah, so you can see the two new apps that were installed. I have the Exchange Management Shell, and I have the Exchange Toolbox, which is new. So I guess I'll go over the Exchange Toolbox really quick. Now, this is something, it's kind of being depreciated over the years. The Exchange Toolbox used to be where you really administer your, or administrate your Exchange machine. I think it used to be where you set up mailboxes and did most of the administration. Now, you really only do a few things with it. Basically, you troubleshoot with it. You have the Q viewer, your remote connectivity analyzer, and details templates, which I've never even messed with. However, I have used the Q viewer, which it's a pretty important troubleshooting tool, actually. Let's go ahead and go to it. So I was having an issue a while back when I was trying to use a I'm sorry, I can't think, an edge transport server within my domain, and so I was able to, or I wasn't able to receive messages or send them very often. I only had like a 20% success rate for when I sent and received messages, which should have been an immediate clue that my subnet mask was wrong, or I had a duplicate address, one of the two, which was the case. I had the wrong subnet mask for my subnet. I started using /24s, but even though I used to use /16s, I got mixed up. Anyway, so I had to use a Q viewer to find out, where were my messages getting dropped, and as it turned out, different places because of my wrong subnet mask. But anyway, that's what you can use the Q viewer for. You can see where your messages made it to and where they didn't make it to. So let's go to. As you can see, both these folders are empty because I haven't created any messages. Mailbox database is also empty. But you'll use this tool for that purpose, and we might get back into it once we start sending messages. Let's get out of that. So the other tool we have is the remote connectivity analyzer, and it's going to redirect you to Microsoft.com. So really, all it does is it takes you to their website to test connectivity. And honestly, I've never really used this, but again, it may come in handy for certain troubleshooting scenarios. But we're going to get out of that really quick. So anyway, that's your Exchange toolbox. Again, not much there besides for some troubleshooting tools. You have your Exchange Management Shell, which we just saw. Uh-oh. Okay, there it is. Started to lag on me and I got afraid. Okay. This is your Exchange Management Shell. It's a lot like PowerShell. It's basically PowerShell except, well, with different commands. It's you get the same prompt. It's used to, again, it's just a shell for command line, or a command line environment for administrating your Exchange environment. And you can do it if you have multiple Exchange servers. You can use the shell to connect to any Exchange server and troubleshoot. There's some troubleshooting tools on it. It's a pretty powerful tool, and you probably will if you mess with it at certain points. Basically, just to check things. You can use it to check to make sure your install went right, or to make sure all your proper services are running. Speaking of which, if you're having Exchange errors after install, go ahead and go to Windows Services and make sure all your Exchange services are running. And you can go to TechNet to find out specifically which ones are what, or used for what. But if that can really disable your entire network. One way to figure it out, if you open up the Exchange management shell and you can't connect to your server for some reason or another, it'll give you an error. It probably means some of the services for Exchange aren't running. So anyway, but other than that, it looks like our Exchange server is good to go. I believe. No, I guess we'll keep going with it. So even though your Exchange server is up and running, it won't be able to send or receive mail unless you have your. No, it won't be able to send, or it might be able to receive if you have your DNS records straightened out. But I don't have any created for this domain yet. So anyway, we're going to create a send connector. Now I remember. The way to administrate your Exchange 2013 server is, like I was saying, it used to be the Exchange Toolbox, but now we use the Exchange Management Console. Or I'm sorry, the EAC, I believe it is. And we can get to that by going to Internet Explorer. Just doing local host / EA or ECP, I believe. Okay, we're getting some errors. You know, I'm not sure if I ever... Actually, I think it's... Okay, there we go. Looks like I had to use, it's over HTTPS. And we're doing this all locally, so it doesn't really matter how I padded my network yet, but typically you'll access this page over the internet. So you have to make sure your network address and port address translation is correct, and we might do a quick overview of that in a minute. So anyway, we're going to log in. You log in as any of your... well, I believe it'll be any of your domain users' password would work. Let's go ahead and use this one. Okay. And we're getting some lag. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I forgot what credentials you actually use for logging into your Exchange box. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Okay, so it turns out I'm having some issues logging into my my ECP console, which is the Exchange Management Console for Exchange 2013. I've had this error before, and it really sucks. The only way I was able to solve it was by reinstalling Exchange onto a domain controller, which you don't want to do. So I'm reading up online a few ways to fix this. The problem is, so I go into I log into ECP, like I have it padded, so I can do it across the web, or this saying OWA. Yeah, I even tried. My OWA doesn't work either. Let me make sure. yeah, it really stinks. Like I said, I'm running Exchange, the first edition. I'm not even running I'm not running SP1. So a few people have said updating the SP1 will solve this issue. So I'm probably gonna try that. Anyway, I'm gonna end this video here, and hopefully I'll be able to figure this out by the next video. So thanks. See you next time.